and just paint those problems away. Bake it down. Just checking to make sure we haven't caused any other problems, and everything else looks fine. So, okay, we'll jump back into our new layer again. We'll jump back down to one of our dirt textures. See what this one looks. No, not that one. This one may work for us. Let's throw that along the base, along the underside just here. So I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to rotate our texture, place it just there. We're working on a new layer. I'm mainly concerned with the white part of the texture here, not the black, because when we change our layer style, we won't see the black part of the texture. Okay. We'll bake that down. Rotate our model around. Rotate our texture to follow that line in the model. Paint that in. Okay, let's bake that down. Rotate our texture, line it up, and paint it in. Bake it down. And same with this side just here. Just line it up. And paint it in. Okay. We'll bake that down. Now let's play with our layer styles a little bit here. I'm just going to move that texture out of the way for a sec. Let's try a add, and let's pull that back a bit. Something like that. We're going to throw down a new layer again. You never have too many layers. Always throw on a new layer when you're working with a new texture. Let's find another dirt texture we can put on here. This one will work quite well, and we'll put this one on the top, I think. So again, I'm going to angle my model like that. Rotate our texture. Just going to scale it back just a bit. Line it up. And paint it in. I'm just going to line that up a bit higher. There we go. Even though we have masking turned on, it's still important not to go too nuts and just run the brush over the whole model. You've still got to be a little bit careful. Okay, we'll bake that down. And again, you'll notice again I'm rotating the model, but I'm not scaling the model up. And I'm not scaling the texture either. So paint that side in. And again, I'm mainly concerned with the white part of this texture, not the black. So pay more attention to the white sections and less to the black. Bake that down. Okay. So I know once I hit the more of the black part of the texture, I don't have to paint any further down. Bake that down. And the last side just here. Again, just rotate our texture so it follows that outline a bit better. Just going to move that texture down so we're using a slightly different part of the texture. And paint that in. With Mari, you'll notice as I start painting, the texture goes away. As soon as I let go of the mouse button, it pops back. Okay, let's bake that down. Move our texture up to the side for a minute and play with our layer styles. Now, I'm going to see if we can do an adjustment stack and put an invert on this and see what it looks like. It may work, it may not. Okay, let's just try darken as opposed to multiply. No, multiply it is. And that just throws a dirt layer along the top edge. Another layer. And again, it looks like we have a bit of an error just here that I'm going to have to fix up really quickly. So we'll do that now. Jump back into the layer we were working with, back to the texture we were working with, which is this one here. Again, we're going to scale it up, and I'm just going to rotate that around a bit and paint over that bit just there. And that bit just there. That's just to fix up that slight error we had. So now we can jump back into layer 5, which is our new layer. We will grab another dirt texture. We could use the same one we used for the top here. In fact, I think we will. But instead of doing an invert on it, we won't invert it. So let's just position our model here. So it's like, just trying to work out if I'll paint on it with it angled forward or angled backward. I think angled backward is better. I'm going to scale that down a bit until it just covers this part of the model here from end to end. So let's scale it up just a bit more. Okay, we're on a new layer again. Let's paint that in. I'm just going to move that up actually, rotate it around a bit. Again, we're going to be hitting the top side of that model there, so we may have to look at that. I'm just going to paint this in and check that before I start doing the rest of the sides of this. I'm going to bake that down. See that line we just created? We can paint that out, but we may not need to. I'm going to change our layer style and see what that does. So I'm going to go and do an add and pull it back. Okay, that line has disappeared because we're not we're only using the texture very lightly here, so we don't have to worry about repainting it out. But in that case, I'm going to angle the model forward to this side, just so we don't have that problem happening. Again, you'll notice I'm not scaling the model and I'm not scaling the texture. I'm just moving the texture around. And because we're working in that new layer style, we'll see exactly what we're painting as we're painting it. So this is just painting in a little bit of dirt and grunge on the side of the model. Bake that down. It's a subtle effect, but trust me, it works and it adds up layer after layer. Even though you think, oh, we can barely see that, why you're bothering, it does make a difference, and people, you can tell when you do the render. Bake that down. And this side just here. Move that up a little. It just helps to break up the underlying texture a bit, make it look a bit more unique. And that's what we'll do when we come to do 3 or 4 different versions of this columns texture. Break that down. Let's throw on a new layer and find a new texture. That's interesting. That is interesting. No, I don't think it's going to work for what we want though, so let's find something else. No. No, I actually want to work on the base of it, I think, so. Let's see here. This one will work for the base. So I'm just going to scale that in. I'm going to move our model up and pull in a little bit. Now on this one, I'm more concerned with the black part of the texture and not the white. So I'm just going to pull that down a little. We're working on a new layer again. Just going to paint that in. Again, it's the black I'm more worried about now, not the white. So I'm not painting all the way to the top because I only really am interested in the black part. I'll bake that down. Again, I'm not scaling the texture, I'm not scaling the model, I'm keeping it all uniform. Paint that in. Bake it down. All I'm doing is rotating the texture a bit. Bake that in. Okay, we'll bake that down and do this last side just here. Okay, we'll bake that down. Let's move that out of the way and play with our layer styles here. I think we'll go with a multiply and we'll pull it back just a bit. Okay. Now I just want to do something around the base here, so I'm going to throw on a new layer. What does this one look like? Okay, this one will work. Let's just zoom in a bit, rotate our model around a little, angle it forward. Not too much though, you don't want to get rid of the masking, you want that to stay. The lighter the masking, the more texture will flow over onto that part of the model, and the darker the masking, the less texture will hit it. So we don't want the texture to hit it there. I'm going to zoom in, scale that up a little, rotate it around. Again, we're concerned with the black of this texture, not the white. So I'm just going to paint up. Let go of the mouse so I can check the texture underneath, so I know where I've got to paint and where I don't. Okay. Let's bake that down. Work on this side just here. Okay. And again, because we're masked out, I don't have to worry about going over that edge because the masking will stop any paint from, any texture from being painted on that part of the model. Let's just bake that down. Alright, rotate our texture, just place it into position and paint it in. Okay, bake that down and do this last side just here. Alright, rotate it around. I may just move the texture over a little, so a little bit of variance, a little bit of difference. Paint this one in. Again, I'm letting go of the texture so I can see the underlying texture where I need to paint and where I don't. And I'm only worrying about the black part, not the white part. Okay, we'll paint that in. We'll bake that down. Let's just move that out of the way, and I'm just going to turn off edge masking so we can see the model a little better. Let's go with darken to begin with, maybe, or multiply. No, I think we'll go with a darken. Actually, no, I changed my mind. We will go back to a multiply and pull it back like that. Okay, let's zoom out a bit. Let's pull this into max and have a look at it. Let's save our project. Now you go down to your channel, you right click on the channel and go export flattened, export everything flattened. We're in our rework folder. Again, it's defaulted to a .tip. Just pop a star in so we can see everything. Small balcony column was the old texture. We're going to keep it that, but we're going to call it underscore painted.tga, and you actually have to type .tga in Mari because it there is no selector for you to choose which file format you want. Okay, so we'll export all patches. Let's jump back into Max. Let's jump into our material editor. That's our old texture here, the first texture that we rendered to texture. Let's change that with the new painted one that we just created. So small column painted, that one there. Okay, and there we go. So now we have our painted column using a similar color to this texture here. It's a different texture, but similar color palette. And it's important to look at your overall color palette when you're creating anything, so that you don't throw on something that won't go, like a lime green or a bright pink or something. This pink is untextured. I leave bits of the model that I've yet to texture up. I just choose a base color. I do that here in the modify tab. Just a light color that shows me that the bits of the model that I still have to texture up much more easily. Some people make them all white or all grey. I like just to use different colors to show me that that's going to be a different texture to that, and the columns are going to be a different texture to the outside of the balcony or the border here. Just a visual reminder for me what still needs to be done and what textures I need to put in. But anyway, that's our column done. So now we have to do that. We've got a whole row of these all the way along the outside. So we can't get away with just using one texture. We're going to have to create, because there are so many of these columns here, probably going to have to create another 3 texture variations, and then we can start just copying and mixing and matching around the outside. People won't notice, but we will need more than one. We'll need another 3. but because we've got the project already saved in Mari, it's quite an easy task to create another 3 variations. Okay. Hey Galen, thanks for popping into chat. Yeah, I like to paint up these separate areas that aren't textured this different color, because it does really help when you look at the overall model as you're painting it up to see which sections you haven't done yet. So it's always helped me. It's always been something I've done when I've done my modeling work, because after a while, unless you know exactly what you've done, when you've done it, you're going to lose track of bits that you have painted up and which bits you haven't. So doing it this way just helps to show you exactly what still needs to be done. All right, let's jump back into Mari. I was going to say Maya. Into Mari, and work on a couple of variations for this texture here. So I'm just going to jump back into Mari. Just making sure I've got my mic unmuted and you guys can hear me. So we have our initial texture here. We're going to create a couple of variations on this. We're going to use the same underlying texture, but we're going to vary up the some of the dirt that we've thrown on it. So let's see. That's the base. I don't want that one. I want to start at the top here. No. This one. We're going to turn that layer off. We're going to throw down a new layer. I'll zoom in on our model a bit. I'm going to turn edge masking back on again. We'll work with this texture we've already got here, but instead of working with the dark part of the texture now, we'll work with the white part. So I'm just going to zoom in a little bit more. Line that up a bit. We're working on a new layer. We've turned off one of the layers from the old texture map that we just exported. I'm just going to paint that in. And again, now we're more concerned with the white part of the texture and not the black now for this top section. So we'll paint that in. We'll press the Alt key to back that down. Rotate our texture around a bit. And again, I'm just releasing the mouse button to see the original texture, so I've got an idea of the bits that I want to paint in. Okay. We'll bake that down. Okay. Rotate our texture around just a bit. Move it over just a little. Okay. We'll bake that down. And decide just here. Let's rotate our texture a little and move it over. Paint in the white part of the texture. I'm using a texture here for this second texture map that's quite different from the first, because you don't want to be doing too subtle a difference. It has to be noticeable. Bake that down. I'm just going to move that out of the way for a sec and play with our layer styles. And add, and we'll pull it back like that. And that's quite different from the one that we had before. Let's work on the sides here as well. So I'm just going to work out which one that is. It's not that one. It's that one there. So we're going to turn off layer 5, throw on new layer. Jump back into our image manager and find another texture. This one will work okay. I'm going to rotate it around, rotate our model. I'm going to angle it just so we can see some of the masking on the bottom and the top here. I think I'll do it from there. Just going to scale it in just a bit. We're on a new layer again now. And now for this one, I'm more interested in the black and less in the white. We can have a look at both, but I think the black will be more interesting than the white. We'll decide that when we play with the layer styles though. Now I'm going to have to scale it up just a bit because this side is a bit wider than the other one. So just move that into position. Bake that down. Okay. Yep, that's exactly right, Galen. I'm not going to do every column differently. What I'm going to do is, because there's about maybe 20 columns along the outside top of that garden terrace, I'm going to create 3 or 4 unique textures. Then I'm going to repeat those textures on all of the columns, varying them around the outside and also rotating 180 degrees some of the columns as well to create more variance, and that way people won't notice that you're repeating the same 3 or 4 textures for all of the columns. If you just use one texture, people, even rotating 180 degrees, because there are so many of them, people are going to notice that you're just using the same texture. But by creating 3 or 4 unique textures and then varying them around the outside and rotating 180 degrees on a few of them, people are not going to notice that you've used the same texture. And because because Mari works in project forms, I can just turn off layers and turn layers on to create the unique textures quite easily without having to repaint the entire model from scratch. Yeah, no, you could do them all individually, but you don't need to. You're not going to. You really are not going to notice in a render that the textures are the same. As long as you've got enough variation and you rotate them 180 degrees in specific places, you won't notice it. But if you've got the time and you really want to have them all unique, you could certainly paint them all uniquely. Let's make that down. It really depends too on the project, and like if you're working for a studio, a lot of the times they won't give you the time that you need to create what you want. So all they're interested in is getting it done and getting it done quickly. The quicker the better. I like to show people little tricks with 3D modeling that will save them time and get their project done as quickly as possible and look as good as it can. But by all means, if you've got the time and you want to do it individually, then go for it. Paint them all individually. I have done that before as well on projects where I think that they're going to do a render where they're going to maybe fly by really closely, 2 columns right next to each other. You'd probably paint them up individually then. Or if you just like doing the texturing work and you want to do them all individually. Okay, we'll bake that down. Let's play with this a bit. Let's pull that back, maybe like that. And now, so we've swapped up the top and the second row. This one we probably won't need to change out because it's a large texture pattern anyway. It's not going to be that noticeable. So at the top, the second bit. What I may do on this one though is throw on a new layer and use a unique looking pattern, a dirt pattern. So something like a very large texture, then use different sections. Yeah, well, that's another option, Galen. Yeah, you can use a very large texture and then move the texture around for the different parts of the model. Yeah, that's another good way to do it. Doing it that way, you're not going to get the precise positioning that you get that I'm showing you here, whereby you have this texture that runs along that outside edge or the top. You will get variation, but it's just going to be a little bit harder to position it properly, if you know what I mean. I'm going to show you how to vary up this one without repainting this center section. So we're going to grab a texture that's a bit unique looking, maybe this one. Rotate it around. Just going to move it into around about there. I'm actually going to rotate the model around a bit. Scale it down just a little bit. Again, closer to the middle, the quicker it'll rotate. Towards the edge here, you get much finer control. So we're working on a new layer. Let's just paint that in. I haven't used GIMP. I use Photoshop a lot for my work as well, Galen. Generally with Photoshop with texturing work, I use it to do color correction. Sometimes I'll paint directly on UVs in Photoshop too. This program, Mari, is made by a company called The Foundry. I believe that they do have a free version that you can use for non-commercial purposes if you wanted to try it out. If you search on Google on Mari, M-A-R-I. Yeah, it does at the moment, yeah. We'll knock it back just a little bit. But yeah, if you go to the Foundry's website, I believe you can download this software free of charge to use it free of charge for non-commercial purposes. Let's bake that down. Move our texture out of the way and play with our layer styles a bit. And we're going to pull it back just a little bit as well so it doesn't look quite so Attack of the Pigeon. Dive Bomber Pigeon. Maybe a bit like that. And by doing that, that's given us a unique look to that side of the model to begin with. And we can do that with the other two textures that we create soon. So let's just export this one. So we'll go export flattened, export everything flattened. We're going to call this one painted underscore R2 for our second version of that texture. Again, we're just going to save our project just in case anything happens with the program. Always save regularly. You don't want to be working for hours and then have the program crash and lose everything you've done. Okay, let's pull in a bit here. I'm going to select the object here. I'm just going to hold down the Shift key and drag a copy out. If that happens, it's easy to fix. Just go into your Utilities tab, your channel info, select the original and copy the UV maps from channel 1. Select a copy and paste the UVs in. That'll bring it back. It's just Max is getting confused when you're making a copy of in the UV channels. That's all that's happening. Let's jump into our material editor. I'm going to work out this, work along this way. Instead of going down, this time I'm going to go sideways so I can see that I'm having a few variations of the same texture. As I said, as I work on a model, I work my way down in this stack. That way I know that the last model I worked on is always the bottom one of the stack here. But because I'm doing variations now, I'm going to go sideways so that I know I've got a few different variations of that texture. So I'm going to throw in a standard map, a bitmap. We're going to find small column painted R2, which is the second version. Thanks for the follow, Galen. I really appreciate it. I always appreciate it when you guys follow my Twitch channel. So, thank you. I stream on Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday US time from 5 p.m, which is 4 p.m. in the US at the now. Now the daylight savings is finished for you guys in the US. So yeah, hopefully I'll see you back again. So now that we've got our second copy of that texture here and our copy selected, I'm just going to assign that material to it. Now we have a variation of the first one that is quite different. People won't pick up that that you've cheated and used the underlying same texture. And we can rotate the model anyway. So what I'm going to do here is select that. I just want to isolate that and get rid of the old column. So I'm going to isolate the selection. That just makes it easier for us to see what we're working on. Well, cool. And please do pop back into chat too, because it's always great to talk to you guys as I'm working. So I'm going to select that. I'm going to ungroup it all. I'm going to select those. I don't want those. I'm just going to group that. I'm going to call this one delete me. I'm going to select that copy we made. I'm going to jump into the top viewport. There's no particular reason. Using PNG is fine as well. I mean, that's a lossless format, so certainly there's no reason not to use PNG. Why do I use Targa? I found if you're doing work in a studio for other people, a lot of the times they'll prefer for you to use a Targa file, and that's just because I think Targa has been around a bit longer and it's a bit easier for people to work with. There's nothing wrong with PNG, and I've used PNG in the past as well, but I found if I'm doing work with somebody else and I have to send it to them, they will either generally prefer me to send it to them as a Targa file or the raw PSD file from Photoshop. But there is nothing wrong with using PNG. PNG is good as well. I believe PNG may be a little bit smaller in file size than Targa too. Yeah, but I've been using it just because when I do work for other people, they generally prefer Targa. But if that's not a problem, if you're not doing work for anyone else and you want to use PNG, then yeah, go right ahead. Okay, let me just move this one into position.